Obviously, we got to see the open practice on Saturday. You've been there for kind of all of what we've been allowed to see at this point. I guess through a week, has anything really like gotten your hair to stand up, like got your ears perked? Like, is there anything that you're looking at and saying, "Hey, like I'm paying attention to this. This is interesting."
I think when we were talking either last week or 2 weeks ago, the position group I said that I most wanted to watch for this open practice on Saturday, it must have been last week, was the wide receivers, and they did not disappoint. And that's without Dane Key, really being involved in much of the practice on Saturday. And so much of it isn't Isaiah Hunter or Ja'Cory Barney, guys that you already expect a certain thing out of, which is wild because they're just going to be sophomores, but you just have an expectation of what they're going to be. I thought Cortez Mills looked really smooth in what he did on Saturday. Keelan Smith looked great.
Keelan
And
Smith looked
so,
incredible.
some of what that tells you is that, okay, like they have some depth here. If anything were to happen to some of their top guys, you can turn to Keelan Smith and to Cortez Mills and to Quinn Clark, and you're going to get production out of them. Like they're in their second season, but they're looking better. And the wide receivers as a whole look good on Saturday. I mean, Keelan Smith had a terrific, and it's one-on-ones and take it for what it's worth, but a terrific play over Andrew Marshall, who looks like he's going to be Nebraska's corner opposite of Sierra Wright. Now, I don't want that to make it seem like Andrew Marshall isn't going to be able to hang. It was just like a Moss-esque type catch over him from Keelan Smith, who showed some explosion. This was a guy that didn't have much to say last year as a freshman, but as a senior for Liberty North, I think, down there in Kansas City, he had a monster year. Like he was pretty good as a junior. People were like, "Oh, this is kind of an interesting take for Nebraska." And then he was like one of the best players in the whole Kansas City area as a senior. And so he has that explosion. We know the NFL bloodlines with his dad, Neil Smith. So Keelan Smith is certainly someone that I think kind of announced himself to those who weren't maybe aware of what he could do if they were paying attention to him on Saturday night. He had some nice catches in the live period. And like I said, Cortez Mills just looks smooth. Everything he does is smooth. The way he runs his routes, the way he's able to just kind of subtly shake defenders. He's a freshman, and I think he has really, really big upside. Like that's a guy that if I could just if I could wave a wand and be like, you can't go in the portal because I want to see what your career looks like at Nebraska, that is someone that has so much upside. And, we've been sort of
Hyper
fortunate,
competitive too.
we've seen some, yeah, absolutely. We've seen some guys that have spent, much of their career at Nebraska and Jordan Westerkamp and Stanley Morgan and people like that. Cortez Mills has bigger upside. And it's hard to explain what makes him so good because he's not the fastest. He's not the biggest, but he just sort of is open and smooth, and he knows how to like avoid contact. He knows how to finish his routes in a certain way. There's just something about him that I guess polished is the way that I would describe it. He seemed very polished for a freshman wide receiver, and if he looks like that right now, what's he going to look like when Corey Campbell continues to build that body? And when Daikiel Shorts can teach him the in and outs of being a college wide receiver, and then he gets to work with an offensive coordinator that can feature him and can put him in situations where he can win against the defense. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited long-term about what Cortez Mills can be.
So, Schaefer, you mentioned all those wide receivers. After you came out of that Saturday practice, did you feel like the receiver group as a position group moved up in your, I guess, mental power rankings of the most important or most impactful groups that Nebraska has just overall in the team?
It made me feel better because, like I said last week, I probably said it last year too, but last week, I was big on the receivers going into 2024, and I felt like they sort of underachieved I shouldn't even say sort of. They underachieved relative to what my expectations were for them. And so then I wanted to self-scout of, okay, like, why did I think that this was going to be X? What went wrong? And there's some things just out of the control of all of it. But I didn't want to make the same mistake, even though I had an inkling that this wide receiver group was going to at least have the same level of enthusiasm from people watching practices. And I would say that their athleticism is higher. I mean, they're physically a little bit more built too. And I'm not just talking, you have Dane Key, who's bigger. You have Isaiah Hunter, who's bigger. Keelan Smith and Quinn Clark, after a year of Corey Campbell, are bigger. Janiran Bonner is the biggest 6'2", 225. Like, it's kind of like Quincy Enunwa, if you remember him,
Yep.
where you would tell yourself, that guy has to be like 6'4", because he just played big. And then he's like 6'1.5", but it's just he has that sort of built body. Like, that's what Janiran Bonner is, and he's going to play it from the slot, which makes him sort of fascinating. But they have some guys where if they want to run the tunnel screens and they want to run some stuff, underneath closer to the line of scrimmage, they should, in theory, have better blocking on the edge this year than where they were at last year, where it was sort of Alex Bullock was their best blocker, and then they kind of had to figure it out from there.
Did you watch it all? Because there were some drills early in the practice. I don't know, you have to go here in a minute, Schaefer, but there were some drills early in the practice where they were doing kind of one-on-one blocking with wide receivers against defensive backs. Did you get a chance to watch that much at all?
I think I saw a little bit of it. When they were doing a lot of the drill work, that was at the same time that we had the ability to shoot with cameras or video. And so I was kind of running around getting different position groups. So I wasn't particularly locked in on any one thing during that. So I can't say that I saw much there is sort of what I'm getting at.
I'll just say because I was paying pretty close attention to that. And I will say the competitiveness and sort of the edge that it seemed like was there in those drills didn't seem like there was a lot of that last year. Like it looked quite a bit different.
Well, it didn't seem like there was a lot of that when it was in the actual games.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
One guy's job. Like, that's why you're out there, is to clear space for Ja'Cory Barney or whoever it is. And it didn't feel like that was as big of a emphasis for them in the actual game. So if it looks like that in practice, I'm excited to see what it looks like when it counts.
That's our guy, Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, take care. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Schaefer.
That's Mike Schaefer from Husker247. We'll take a break here real quick, but first, got to remind you that if you've got a home, you've got equity that you can use for cash when you need it, whether it's from remodel, need to do your kitchen, bathroom, maybe you just need to take a little vacation, need a little time off. There's equity in your home that you can access with Central Federal Credit Union. Go to centrusfcu.org to start an application and to learn about the different products there. This one's called a HELOC, and you can get cash out of the equity from your home. Federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender.